Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new session of the Young Scientist Network. Allow me also to say hello to the members, but also to the friends of the Young Scientist Network joining us today for this special session dedicated to presenting a paper. I'm with Dr. Martin Lukindu, from Target Malaria, Uganda, and with Lauren Gibson. And my name is Layman. We are both part of the communications team, and we're hosting this webinar. Lauren, you want to say hello?
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's great to see so many of you are joining us this webinar. In the chat, please feel free to introduce yourself and let us know where you are connecting from.
Okay, amazing. Just to let you know also that we'll have the opportunity to have a Q&A session in the second half of the webinar, so you can ask them whatever questions that you have for Dr. Lukindu. So back to you, Martin. Do you want to briefly introduce yourself to the audience today and let us know more about your work at the Uganda Virus Research Institute?
Yes, Ndiamani, thanks so much, and thanks everyone who has joined. In fact, I'm a young scientist as well, just like many of you who are joining us here. But since I recently just got my doctorate from the prestigious University of Notre Dame, under the supervision of Professor Nora Besansky, who is a member of the National Academy of Science of the United States. And after my doctorate, I did a kind of a sandwich postdoc with the University of Notre Dame, as well as the Uganda Virus Research Institute under Target Malaria project. And I continued with the work I did at my doctoral dissertation, which was basically looking at the genomics and the genetics of major malaria vectors in sub-Saharan Africa. And right now I'm looking at ways of how one can estimate population sizes and dispersal ranges using a technique we call closed kinmark result recapture, among other things. But prior to that, I also did a Master's of Science in zoology, specializing in entomology in Uganda at Makerere University, which is the largest public university in Uganda. And doing my research there, I looked still at mosquitoes, but this time it was Aedes africanus mosquito. Those of you in the mosquito world know that this is a mosquito from that was first isolated. And I was interested in understanding its ecology, behavior, as well as population genetics. Some of that work has since been published. Again, for my Bachelor of Science, I was at Makerere University. Apart from the science that I do, I'm also heavily involved in scientific communication as part of Target Malaria. I'm a spokesperson for Target Malaria here in Uganda, where we do a lot of communication to stakeholders, like communities and politicians, regulators, among others.
Yes. Okay, sounds nice. Yeah. So in your young career as a scientist, you've done quite a bit of things, including speaking to journalists. But before we dive deeper in the theme of today, I wanted to know more about your approach of science communication. So what shaped your approach to communicating science before we get to papers?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, Diamani. One of the issues we face as basic scientists, researchers who do basic research, is convincing communities the relevancy of your work. There's a lot of appreciation for implementation research and also much for basic research. And again, such for my family, my kids always want to know what exactly do you do that, and you help devise ways of communicate to them and showing the relevancy of your work. But so that's one of the things that shaped my approaches to communication, having a message for different types of people, because here at UVR, we do communicate to stakeholders, including politicians, and fellow scientists, our peers as well. So one has to get a way of effectively communicating a message to people who are not really initiated into like the work we do, being a little bit simplistic, but at the same time retaining, the message that is very, very important for them. I may give an example. Say if I'm communicating to a regulator, what do they want to know? If I'm communicating to a field scientist, what exactly do they want to know, and from my research, and how exactly am I going to package that information? So awareness of the different audiences that I have to approach kind of helped shape my approach to science communication.
Okay, that's amazing. After we've heard from Martin, I would like also to know more about our audience. So Lorraine, if you can just launch the first poll to just kind of have an idea of the profiles we have today with us. Please feel free to respond. You're not obligated to, but it would be nice to know more about you. And I have I guess my first question now about the team today will be about the essential. So, in your opinion, Martin, what is the first thing researchers should think about before even speaking about their paper?
Thanks. It's kind of related to what I've just said. It's very, very important for you to know the audiences that you are communicating to. Yeah. It could be the regulators in your country. How are you going to communicate your science paper to them? It could be a policymaker. I may give an example that in Uganda, we normally have World Malaria Day celebrations. And during those celebrations, we go to communities, who are heavily impacted by the disease, and they're interested to know how our work is going to help, alleviate the public health concern that malaria presents. So, if you have very good publication that you made out there, can you get out key messages that these communities can try to relate with, and so that they appreciate your work? Sometimes you could be presenting your publication to your peers, people within your field. For example, I'm a medical entomologist. If I'm presenting to the medical entomologist, there are certain things that they're looking out. They're looking out at your sample sizes. How do you come to that sample size? They're looking out how rigorous your science was, all that is something that is of interest to them. If I'm communicating, for example, to a regulator about my publication, we'll be concerned about the ethical issues. If it is, let's say, I went up to the field and collected blood spots from communities. Questions like, did you seek consent from them? Was it written? Was it verbal? All those are areas of interest to your audience. At UVA, we normally have journal clubs, which are kind of multidisciplinary, much as the research institution does a lot of research, but you can't assume because we have people from different fields. And in such audiences, again, not to leave people behind, you make sure that you define basic terms so that they don't, lose track of the very interesting research that you have done. I've seen this several times where a presenter has shown that people know exactly what this means, and that's a very bad assumption. You may not generate a lot of interest from your audience. So one has to be aware the audience that you are communicating to, and the kind of message that you're going to present to them, and how you're going to package it.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds good. Just a quick comment on the poll that we just launched. So it seems that we have mostly early career researchers today. 50% of the audience pursuing this kind of career. We also have students, PhD students mostly. So I think that's the right kind of audience we were thinking about, and we hope that this session will be also helpful for your work and your preparation. Well, I guess I'm gonna go to the next question because I pursued a short career in research. I did a master's in contemporary history, and I used to attend several presentations. And one of the things I noticed is that people sometimes focus heavily on their research. So, of course, they focus mostly on their results. So, beside results, what do you think should be also of essence? Like, what else should they think about to communicate clearly in addition to their results?
Yeah. And you're right, Liamani, because I've attended several presentations where there is a lot of focus on the interesting result that one has generated from their rigorous research, which may not be a bad thing, but you lose audience. I'd rather you start from your first slide. We normally have the title slide, and from what I observe, that people just skim over the first slide, the next slide. The first slide is very important, in my opinion, and it's important for us researchers to spend some time helping the audience understand the title of your study, right? Because sometimes that title contains some abbreviations that other people may not know. Your peers could be aware. Let me give you an example. If I'm doing a research on, for example, if it's a GWAS study of IR markers in a Northwest Gambia in hyperendemic malaria region, such GWAS means, but someone who is not into genetics may not know that it means that you are looking at genome-wide association studies, and IR means that you are looking at insecticide resistance markers. And so it is important for you to spend some time, just a few minutes, trying to talk briefly about your title and maybe a quick intro about your study. Then it's also important to have an introduction. Can you give a hook sentence, something that will keep the audience following? For example, if it's malaria, show the impact of malaria. For example, if it's in Uganda, we know that Uganda is one of the top countries contributing to the burden of malaria. So you let the audience know about that. Of course, then you can proceed to the significance of your study. And then in there, just give us the gap in knowledge that you are trying to fill. What are you going to do? What are you trying to do that others have not done before? That gap in knowledge. And then, of course, you can go to your research methods. Of course, now go to your results, do a discussion. And the key take-home message that someone else will, think about after leaving your presentation. Could you point that out, preferably in a conclusion? Would you give like one-liner, a quick finding, something very important that one can think about from your study? Yeah, and you're right. I mean, I always find people concentrating much more on the results and not so much on other aspects of research,
Okay, that's very interesting. Actually, I would have never thought that there was special care brought to the title, at least at that point. So, what's your advice? Should the person presenting agree on the title with their supervisor, or should he get it reviewed, or he or she, because it could be a woman researcher, should he run it by his colleagues just to make sure that the expectation is the same, the promise and so on? So what would be your advice to to be sure to have the proper title?
Yeah, I think that's where mentorship comes into play. As young scientists, we really need to be mentored. And you may think you have a very wonderful title, but if you consult your mentor, they may have something else to say about your title. So it's always important for us to work hand in hand with our mentors before putting anything out there. Yeah, but basically, generally, most titles are a summary of the work that you have done. For example, I could do a study of population genetics of Anopheles gambiae in Uganda, and then implications for malaria control. Yeah, kind of summarizes, should be kind of a summary of the research you have done. Importantly, always work hand in hand with your supervisor or advisor for you to come up with something that is a kind of a summary of the research you have done, but at the same time it is delivering the message to the audience. Again, one always has to prevent having long titles. There's some titles that are too wordy. Yeah, just it should be a little bit concise, but at the same time delivering the message. Yeah.
Okay, that's nice. We have a second poll that we asked the audience. Lorraine, you want to have a quick comment on the results?
Sure. So majority of the people who participated in the poll, which was 58% of our participants here today, spend most of their time researching, followed by a tie in designing slides and practicing delivering. And then a small percentage also anticipates questions from the audience, as well as learning about their audience. So we have a wide range of answers from our participants.
Okay, that's interesting. So what do you think, Martin? We have a very small portion who kind of do research on the audience, so the people who will be hearing the presentation. Any comment on that or experience that you've had with that?
About the mistakes?
No, basically we did a quick poll to ask the audience like
Yes.
how much time they were spending like researching or designing the presentation, because it needs to look also, you know, appealing, at least not very nice, but at least visible, legible and visible. And we
Yeah.
have small portion who don't research the audience a lot. So do you think that it's important to know who you are talking to, or, you know, you just focus on the
Yeah.
presentation? What do you think about that?
Absolutely. I think it's really important. Again, it goes back to one of the questions that you asked. Yeah, knowing how spread out your audience is very, very key for you to deliver an effective message. For example, if most of the your people in the audience are researchers, yeah, it makes your life easy. Yeah, as a research scientist, just know you're talking to peers, and therefore you're going to focus on how rigorous your methods were. But if you have people who are not really into research, it means you must give a very strong background about your study so that, you know, they appreciate the kind of work we do. Failure to do that, people won't appreciate your work. Yeah.
Okay,
So
nice.
it's really important. Yeah.
Now maybe time for, you know, just more about your experience. Well, bad experience. Like, what is the most common mistake that, for instance, early researchers do, or PhD students, or was there a big mistake that you've done one day while presenting a paper or a study?
Yeah, I think, let me start with some of the mistakes that I've observed. You know, I first made a presentation. Unfortunately, it was a very, very big meeting, the American Society of Tropical Medicine and Hygiene. That was some time back when I won a travel award. And then I realized that, some of the mistakes that presenters do, including myself, I'm not rolling that out. One, some of these meetings are very tailored in terms of time. There's a lot of time management. If you are told to make a presentation within 15 minutes, please let it be 15 minutes. Yeah. Because you have us lined up behind you, to make presentations. So you don't want to delay anyone or to use someone else's time. Another thing that I saw is the congested slides. I mean, sometimes you look at the presentation, the slide is too busy, way too busy, and you may not necessarily follow up what the presenter is saying. You know, there's a rule they call the 7x7 rule. You have 7 lines words, that helps the audience follow what you are saying, and they can also make a quick glance at your slides. But again, as a piece of advice to our audience here, since they are young researchers, it is important for you to know your research really well, not to thank the audience and start reading off the slides. Yeah, that can be a put off. People want to see your face, and they want to see that you actually know what you did. You are owning your work. So the lines on your slides are just prompts for you, just to guide you, present the data, the work that you did. Yeah, another thing is the small fonts. Sometimes someone makes a presentation, the fonts are way too tiny. I think the minimum should be about 18, the size of 18 that one can have. Otherwise, if you go to 12 and all that, people will not clearly, follow what you're saying. Again, for big meetings, anything can happen. Yeah, move with the backup of your presentation. Maybe a USB-C, or have it on your email or somewhere, the database somewhere, so that in case anything happens, you have a backup instead of starting afresh to start designing slides afresh. So it is really, really important. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very
So
important.
maybe
Exactly.
a mistake that you said you have something about the mistake that I've made before.
Yeah, sure. You care to share some of the bad experiences? Please go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. I think as a young scientist and a researcher, we assume that we know everything. There's time I think I was asked a question by one professor. The Siverson, he asked a question which I wasn't clear so sure, but I answered it anyway. Now I don't know whether I was wrong or right. And then later I learned that you don't necessarily have to answer every question if you don't know a thing or two. You could find a way of asking for more time to do that. To maybe you don't have information about that. There's a way you can answer it, deflect instead of, answering things where you are not really so sure about, because it gets into the professor's mind. For my case, it was a professor. He knows that, okay, this is really a young scientist. So it is an appeal to a scientist. You don't have to always know everything. You can give an yeah.
Some of the senior, I don't know, researcher, they can take that opportunity also to teach you a lesson about humility. You don't need to know everything about everything. So I had some experiences with that. And Martin, I wanted to know more about the kind of events or conferences you have been, like in your career as a researcher, whether while being at UVRI or during your time in the USA. So can you just let us know the range of places you've been to present things, and if like you took some takeaways from it in terms of, I don't know, range or size or opportunity?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good question, because there are some conferences that young researchers go to, and these are multidisciplinary conferences, international conferences. The biggest one, as long as you are doing top medicine, is the American annual meeting of the American Society of Tropical Medicine and Hygiene. It is really, really big. And there are so many teams, so many people from different backgrounds. And when one is presenting, you must be aware of that you don't have only people in your field. Therefore, they may not necessarily understand whatever you're doing. Now, there are also very specific meetings kind of tailored to your field. For example, I'm really interested in genomics and genetics. There are meetings that are specific for those who are interested in malaria in genomics. Those ones, of course, you may not give strong backgrounds because they already know like the impact of malaria, but they're interested to know how you say work with the data. If some of you do whole genome sequencing, how did you filter up your data? How did you call your variants and all that? They're very, very interested in very technical aspects of your data. Now, in Uganda, we have also presented at several meetings here. Normally, we have what we call a malaria science colloquium every year before celebrating the Malaria Day. Now, again, a country that is very, very multidisciplinary. Actually, have people from the media, the Uganda media, who attend such conferences. And it's important for you to really be aware that these are not scientists, but at the same time, they're going to capture some of the information that you're going to talk about. Yeah. And so you have to be clear. And in some instances, they even ask for time for you to give like a news bite to them. One has to pick out something that the community who watch news in a country are going to relate with. So that kind of diversity of audiences is very, very important. So I've been to most of those meetings. Also, in their money, as I said, we work with communities. Yeah. Sometimes we have stalls or displays or exhibitions in which the local people participate, and that becomes tricky because you have to communicate science in local languages. For our case, it is Luganda. So the science that you do using English and writing nice publications, this time you must kind of translate in a local language so that people understand and appreciate the kind of work to do. And besides our country, some of our research is funded by the taxpayer. So it's kind of like a give back to the community by, letting them appreciate the type of work we are doing and how relevant it is to tackle is malaria, which is, as you know, is such a huge public health concern in our country.
Okay, that's interesting. We were actually recently at a science event called the Great Exhibition Road Festival in the UK, and we had some of our colleagues from the lab who were there, getting questions from young people, older people, people from the African diaspora. And I think for a researcher, it's very important to see these kind of opportunities to kind of, face the public and audience that maybe don't know much about your research or will have trouble to all the subtleties. So that's a nice experience to have.
Can I add this also that some of the events we do, we go to public universities in our country because we have so many students who are doing biotechnology courses, and to a large extent they do a bit of theory and they have never really seen how practical some of the knowledge they learn is. And so we interact with the students there. It's always interesting actually because if I'm presenting a paper, they are really, really interested to know the science. the nitty-gritty of the science that you are doing, because they know you're a part of it and they would love to know, how can I practice this to solve a societal problem? So we do a lot of engagement at targeting those students, but also we really want to create interest among our students, because today we are around, tomorrow we don't know whether we shall be around. We want research to continue with or without our presence. And so these young people in universities have to get that interest as early as possible.
Great. Now maybe we're gonna launch our last poll, and then we'll leave everyone alone. We just wanted to hear from you about like what is the main challenge you face when you're preparing for a presentation, dear audience. So feel free to let us know in the poll. So next question is about Q&A session, and actually we'll have one just in 4 minutes to give you the opportunity to ask your questions to Martin. I see that some have started already. That's they're ahead of time, but we'll get to that very quickly. So many young researchers are nervous about Q&A session. So what would be your advice to prepare for difficult question, and what should scientists do when they do not know the answer, or if like a question kind of highlight a gap in their knowledge or in their presentation? You kind of responded to this question a bit, but if you want to expand on that, like what helped when you were preparing for a particularly difficult audience?
And that was one of the mistakes that I made during my early career as a presenter. And first close this. It's important to know as young scientists that you are not a database of a lot of knowledge. There are always things that you don't know, and in the audience where you're presenting, there are people who know a little bit more. So wherever you ask the question that you're not aware of, you are not so sure, you may ask the person who has asked, talk to them after the presentation, maybe to clarify something after the presentation. So the point is, you may not necessarily gamble with a question and then you answer it wrongly. Sometimes you could say that probably I didn't look at it that way, but I'm happy to learn more from you if we could meet, after the presentation. So that is something that can help you buy time, and also not really try to answer everything to appear like a genius. No one's a genius. We all try to learn things. And here's the thing, Manny, as you present, you realize the gaps in knowledge over some topic. And so it's really, really important for you as young scientists. Always try not to answer everything that probably don't know of, so that people don't look at you like you didn't prepare, you didn't do what so you can buy time. You can ask for more time to meet whoever is asking, and you learn from them.
It can be also an opportunity to kind of expand your new network, because sometimes at the end of conferences, you'll get questions from more senior people. So if they seem to have really a knowledge of that area, or it can be like a field or a theme or a geographical area, you can just connect with them and say, okay, you asked this question, I would like to know more about your own experience with that. Like, are there any advice, or, that can be also opportunity to connect with other scientists who are working in a related field or not, no?
Can I say this also in the money? One has to be respectful. I've been to labs where you have postdocs who are really tough on graduate students. They try to ask the toughest question to a graduate student. It's the nature of postdocs, those who are attached to labs. That's how we behave sometimes, unfortunately. So sometimes it can get on your nerves, but as a student, of course, you have to be respectful. Sometimes they don't want to hurt you, but they want you to be grilled in your field. So one has to be respectful, get a way of answering in a very respectful manner.
Thank you, Martin. I think that's were most of the questions I had so far. I might have more, but in the meantime, we can start taking questions from the audience. Let's address the question of Bigpa Danazumi, I think from Uganda, but I'm not completely sure. So she has two questions. The first one is a bit technical. She's asking if you have experience with genomic analysis, what is like what tool is best between Eugene Pro and Google Colab? I'm not completely familiar with those tools, but she's asking which one she should prefer.
Yeah, I like Colab, Google Colab. Look, if you're a student of Python, Google Colab is the best for your analysis, and I think I prefer that. But also, as a student, familiarize yourself with the workflows that we have, include Nextflow. Very, very wonderful workflows. Years back, we didn't have those workflows. We used to work with the Linux, where you do an analysis at a time. If it's filtering, you do it at a time. If it's just a alignment, you did at time, then you pipe your data. Right now, we do have workflows where you basically just know where your input is and you have beautiful analysis done for you. So familiarize with yourself with such workflows. But I prefer Google Colab.
Google Colab. Okay, that's noted. And the same person is wondering about, pursuing a career in the industry. So she's asking which discipline is best fit for someone who wants to work in industry rather than academia, and what's best between public health and molecular biology. I'm not sure I get that last part, but
what's the first part? The last part I have not. But what industry? I think the last presenter, Dr. Jonathan, talked about the various opportunities out there for researchers. But from my experience, if you really want to get into industry as a scientist, I would recommend biochemistry a lot. Yeah, because if you look at the election we are taking, there is a need for more chemotherapeutics. Even just look at malaria alone, we are having a resistance emerging against the current tools, both the insecticide as well as the drugs that we use. And the people to help us get new drugs, people who are really versed in biochemistry. It's such a very, very important field that one could look into. Yeah, of course, even other fields can always get you opportunities out there. But from my experience, I think there are opportunities for us to get newer interventions.
Okay. While we wait for other questions, well, I'm not gonna monopolize the floor. Lauren, do you have any question that you wanted to ask Martin?
Sure. So one question would be, so Martin, you work on a highly technical topic, mosquito biology. How do you transform this complex research into a clear and engaging story that could fit different audiences?
Yeah, Lauren, that's really an awesome question. And oftentimes when I talk to students, there's one thing I emphasize is whatever presentation you do, make it a story that people can follow, not jumping from one area to the other. The moment it's kind of a narration, a narrative that one can follow from step A to step Z, it becomes a little bit easy. Now, another thing that I really emphasize is to use illustrations. Yeah, they save a lot of words that you can confuse people. Yeah, so try to make sure that your workflows or your presentation flows, even when one is writing a manuscript, the flow of your manuscript is very important, even for us reviewers. I'm sure some of these scientists here have reviewed the publication. There are some manuscripts you review and you're like, oh my goodness, this is poorly written. Like you just can't follow what the author is trying to communicate. So get that story such that the audience can follow, and also be as illustrative as possible. For some of the communities we work with, we use visuals of different colors. Yeah. Again, it helps people follow what you're saying. It becomes really interesting when you're talking to the local communities who have never heard about the word DNA. Yeah. There's a way you can try to use visuals to let them know that this is what we mean by DNA. Yeah. So it's really, really important. So that's some of the piece of advice I'll give to the researchers here.
Okay, that's thank you, Martin. Just saying hello to Dr. Charles Gisu, who is a public health specialist, and I see that he joined to listen to us. One question for me, Martin. like in the past, have you always used like visual aids or presentation? If you are in a setting where you cannot use that, I don't know, because there is no screen or a projector or it broke down, like what do you do? Where do you start? Or is it just like the usual methodology?
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, we work with within very remote villages in Uganda. Oftentimes, you don't have electricity, to come along with your projector. Neither do you have the public address system, and to talk and so that people hear what you're saying. So visuals come into play here. What we do is, of course, you use markers. They are very, very permanent markers with your board. Yeah. You design manually, some visuals that people can see and try to relate your work. Yeah. And it has really, really helped us. And this is not really scientific. Sometimes the way people relate with your work can be like a drama. We do that as part of Project Malaria, like a play that kind of people can again try to associate with the kind of work we do, because these people cannot read. Yeah. Even if you provide a very good manuscript, they can't read. So if you can come up with a drama of sorts and narrating the kind of research you do, maybe they can follow. But for researchers that work with NGOs or research institutions, please move with markers of different colors. Yeah, with a whiteboard mark. Yeah, to some of those remote sites. It's easy, of course, if you have electricity around. Yeah, design very good slides. And we do have tools right now that can help you design very good slides. One of them is called Canva. I'm sure scientists here have used it. It can help you design slides with very good background, very good contrast that could be very helpful for you to make an awesome presentation to communities.
Very great. So our audience is feeling a bit shy. Let us know if you have questions. We have one question. So that's I think we have answered to that one already. Well, I guess I'll go again now while we wait for additional question. So what has been your experience with journalists? I'm kind of steering away a bit from the topic here, but what would be the main differences between speaking to a journalist about research and science, speaking to a journalist or to a fellow scientist? Is it easier or tougher? Because you do a lot of media engagement in Uganda.
Yes. Yeah. So I think there are some who joined up late. Yeah, I do a lot of engagement with the media here, both the TV media, the radio, as well as the newspapers in our country. Our aim is really to spread the message of our research to the outside world. I mean, gone are the days when scientists used to close themselves behind our labs and you do your research and publish. That's not enough. The dynamics are kind of different. The funding terrain is very, very tricky. Yeah. So being able to communicate your research, whether to a journalist or to a funder, is very important. Sometimes you're given only 1 minute with a funder and you have to communicate how relevant your data is. But to your point, a journalist is a person who pick a one word and then make a headline in the mainstream media. Now, it can be awesome if it quoted you right, yeah, but can be disastrous if your message wasn't quoted right. You start going into a defense mode of coming up with clarifications that I didn't mean that, I meant that. So when one is really engaging journalists, it's important, of course, to record your message. Oftentimes we do record our messages, and most journalists are kind enough before they publish anything to let you know that, hey, is this a perfect reflection of what you said? And you can give it a thumbs up and a thumbs down. But those are rare opportunities. For some journalists, they may not necessarily give you an opportunity to review the message. Now, again, for us people who are involved in scientific communication, there are some messages, the key messages that you must have at your fingertips, yeah, so that people just cling onto those key messages. They bring out the bigger picture of your results. So it's important for you scientists that get the key messages from of your research. Fortunately, dear Mani, we do have people who have specialized in scientific communication. There are courses out there, even here at our universities. There are professionals who can guide you on what you can say and what you cannot say. Also important when you're communicating with journalists, be as clear as possible about your message. It's very, very important because for most of them, all they did is mass communication. They have no idea about the kind of research you are doing. So try your best to explain to them the type of work you do. And in Uganda, we do bring them to our research institution, yeah? Because when you bring someone to your lab, there's a way they associate with you, the work that you are doing, and they become more engaged as opposed to meeting them from the news stations. Of course, I've met them, I've done interviews at news stations, which is, I mean, the advice is the same. Be as clear as possible when you're communicating to them. Don't talk about something that you are not so sure of, yeah, because they are going to cling onto that. But when I'm communicating with my colleagues, my peers, research medical entomologists, it's very, very easy. Yeah, these are colleagues who know the kind of work we do. It's always more of a discussion about, especially about the methods. Actually, the focus is usually on the methods and probably the results that you got, and probably the gap that you are trying, to fill from your research. So it's a kind of different when you're communicating to the two groups of people. In any case, it is very, very important to perfectly deliver your message, irrespective whether you're communicating to journalists or to peers in your field. Yeah.
Brilliant. No, it's true that science communication is on the rise. There are a few networks, I think, in South Africa mostly. In Uganda, I've met some of the science journalists, I think, a few months ago. So it's a very niche field, but there are a few people who are, writing interesting stories, and it's great to highlight that they are incredible ambassador of your research. Some science journalists look very closely on the latest research being published, and they try to get stories out of it, by interviewing people who are living through the same hardship or things like that. One comes in mind. I think it was conducted actually in Uganda about the consequences of cerebral malaria and how it can impact developmental. It can result in developmental delays in children. So it's true that presenting the science with colleagues is fine, but when the research is really groundbreaking or you made a major discovery, so feel free also to connect with journalists. Maybe they are also interested in knowing more about the research that you've done. So we have more questions from the audience. I'll maybe start with Emmanuel Asimue, who's asking, while working on presentations, sometimes we need to use cartoons and nice images, especially with methodologies to relay concepts. Some of the tools to use for this require subscription like BioRender. Do you have alternative tools you can recommend?
Yeah. Awesome. BioRender is really one of those tools that you can download now. There's a version that is free, and there are some others that you have to pay for. You get a license, but you know what, dear man, it's worth it for you scientists. You can pay that little money. You can design very, very nice illustrations with BioRender. Very, very beautiful illustrations and your presentations. Yeah. So get that software. Of course, there's a free version, but you can do so much with the free version. Yeah, you don't get access to some of the tools that they have in there. Yeah. So BioRender, I would recommend it for any have very good illustrations. Yeah.
And what about documenting, the field work? For instance, as entomologists, you guys go on the field, you collect mosquitoes. What about taking photos of those things and then putting them on presentation? Do you think that it could work to kind of, add that visual dimension of the work being done, or is it really useless?
Yeah, I mean, one can do that, but sometimes there are ethical concerns, about taking photographs. Say, I'm always involved in collecting mosquitoes inside people's houses. I know I'm doing an awesome job by sampling the mosquitoes. but may not be ethically right for me to take a photograph of someone's bedroom. Yeah, so it's tricky. However, let's say I'm collecting a larvae from a pool, a habitat. Maybe I can take photo just to show someone that actually I'm collecting the right species of larvae. Yeah. So it depends. One has to be a little bit judicious about taking photographs, especially if it may land you into trouble. Some people don't
Yes.
want to have their photographs taken. Yeah.
No faces, no private bedrooms, so just maybe the grass, the mosquitoes, and
Yeah,
things
absolutely.
like that.
And oftentimes one can seek consent from the house owners. Again, I'm speaking from a mosquito point of view. You could seek consent, whether you could take maybe a picture of their house to show that you collected from a house of certain structure, and then you also collected from a house of a different structure. Yeah, you may get consent. But also with Tajik Malaria, we can also seek what you call community consent. That can be given by the leaders of that community. Yeah, they can allow you that, hey, you're free to take, say, photograph of the lava pool. Yeah. So it's important for those who are field researchers to know that. Yeah. And again, if I was a researcher and attending a presentation international, I see my house somewhere, someone took a photograph of my house and I had no idea whether I consented, it may not bode well. Yeah, ethically.
I absolutely agree. We have another question, well, two questions. I'll start with the first one on the Q&A board. How can researchers effectively communicate the real-world impact of their work, especially when the science is still in the research or testing phase?
What's that?
Yes, how can you, communicate the potential of the research you're doing? I guess it's like, it's a bit of a tricky question because you need to communicate about, for instance, if we take gene drive technology, like we're doing this work because we're hoping to bring a new tool to the matter. So how do you communicate about the impact that you're hoping to achieve in someone's life, sometime down the line, or in one generation or two?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good question. Again, a background to that for those who joined late. So as Target Malaria, we're involved in devising novel tools, novel genetic control tools against malaria vectors. And using a gene drive technology is a relatively new tool, but we think it has a lot of potential. Now, how do you communicate that? It is really tricky because most of the genetic control tools are still in the pipeline. But one thing you should show the communities the impact of the disease that you are dealing with, how impactful malaria is to the community. You also show them that the current tools, much as they have done their best to try to fight the disease, there is still a problem. And for our case, it is the resistance that is cropping up on almost every class of insecticide that there is. And so you let someone know that, hey, in case our mosquitoes here are resistant to every insecticide that we have, we need to think about alternative tools. We can't just sit back and wait till someone else does the work here. So as scientists, local scientists, we must come up with novel tools. So communities try to buy into that. Of course, you have to indicate that if such a tool works, this is how impactful it's going to be. This is how different it's going to be from the current tools, and probably how complementary it can work with the available tools. Yeah. Of course, you don't promise a lot, showing that the tool you're working on is a much better the moment it's out. Malaria is finished. No, probably you should not do that because research is still in its phase. You don't know how the vector itself is going to react to the new tools that we are making. Yeah.
A question about social media for researchers. Somebody is asking if there is a social media community or group that someone can join. If you have some website to recommend.
Yeah, I think we do have this network. It's one young scientist network. You could join that. But also as Target Malaria, we are very active on social media. We are on LinkedIn. We are on Twitter or X. And I think even Facebook, we are always there. So feel free to follow us, to like us. Yeah, you always get updates. We also have a website, Target Malaria website, where you can get a lot of information. Yeah.
Yeah, so well, this network is specifically dedicated to young African scientists, but there are also bigger communities such as ResearchGate. I believe that you've had a profile there, or Google Scholar. I can put it in the chat, but did you have experience with sometimes ResearchGate? Like, did you do research on a author or on a theme on ResearchGate?
Yeah, I do have a ResearchGate page and also a Google Scholar page. People can look out for some of the work that I've done together with my co-authors. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, can I say this for our young researchers? Always you must make yourself visible to the scientific, know your work, even if you have not published a lot. Just get that page. There's also a website called academia.edu.
Okay.
Such a page. Yeah, and let people know what you do. Never know, someone else would bump into your page and they're interested in the kind of work that you're doing. Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm just gonna look. I think I saw a question on the chat. Someone, Belcher Kelly Murika is asking about the good practice that he or he could use to help them manage the time during a presentation. Should they put like those chronometer, or is it too triggering? Like, what would be your recommendation to, be mindful about the time?
Yeah. Yes, I think for me, what I normally do is to do some bit of practice, putting time as one of the factors that I should look out for. So for most conferences, you are given about 10 minutes of presentation and probably about 5 minutes of Q&A. So as you practice, please make sure you have a time around so that you don't overshoot. And also, I always advise, just make sure that you know your research. You don't dwell a lot on a small point. Yeah, and you overly talk about a point. Just make sure that you can concisely talk about your research and move over to other slides. Otherwise, you may find yourself using a lot of time. And as I say, it's one of the mistakes that researchers do. Shooting to other people's time slots. Yeah, you should always present that. So you have a timer around as you practice it. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I guess that's it. Just checking quickly if we have other questions so I don't leave out anyone. But I think that's it from the audience. So Martin, what would be your word of conclusion if you had I don't know, 3 or 5 top of mind advice or recommendation to give to our fellow researchers here? What would they be?
I mean, since we are looking at a presentation, one thing that I would love to emphasize, and I can give a background to that during my graduate school. My professor is a known researcher in the mosquito world. I mean, if you're doing mosquito genetics, you should be knowing Nora Besansky and her work on inversions and adaptations and all that. But I was amazed that before she made a presentation internationally, she used to first make it with our lab, I mean, this is an accomplished scientist, but she used to prepare her slides and then present before us, mere grad students. So I think that kind of got me very, very interested. And so I advise researchers, don't make slides like 1 hour to the presentation and then you go and present. I guarantee you're going to make mistakes and people won't like what you're presenting. In fact, if you're presenting and looking at the audience and people are on their phones scrolling, just know you have not captured their attention. You are boring them. And often the case is because you have not practiced enough. By practicing with your colleagues, you get confidence in what you are doing. They actually help you to see the gaps in knowledge of what you're presenting. So make sure you practice, and practice. In real estate, they have a term called location. For a scientific presentation, it is practice, practice, and practice. Yeah. And then finally is the extensive literature review for most of your studies. As long as you're doing a study, please read widely about your research. I have met so many scientists who are medical entomologists, and when you ask them the cycle of Plasmodia, they can't explain it. Because all they know is mosquitoes. That's it. They can't explain how this Plasmodia circulates into a human body and cause illness, what we call the pathology of the malaria pathogen.
One last question that's coming late, but someone is asking about funding, like how to go about funding. Like, what have been your experience? Maybe helping with grant applications and things like that. What advice would you give the members?
Yeah, I think that's like a big topic in itself. But as I said, in the the funding landscape is kind of very, very competitive. Recently, I read a grant where they only offered 7% of the applicants. They had 740 applicants, and only a couple of them were awarded. So it is really, really competitive. But that doesn't stop us from always trying, to apply. So one has to look out for the grant as early as possible for the call, and start preparing your project as early as possible. Don't wait for last minute, write-ups. Seek out information from the call, whoever sent it out, get the information and start preparing as early as possible. But also for us African scientists, try as much as possible to look out for collaborators, especially in the Western world. And they give you NIH grants. Most of them, it's hard for you, an African scientist, to really win those grants without having a collaborator. Even for some European grants, look out for those collaborators. How do you get those collaborators? Try your best to attend international conferences. However small your research is, apply for those conferences and do your best to attend. And STMH has made it a bit easy. When I won my travel grant, I think they're only awarding about 20 people all over the world. It was super competitive. Right now, I think they award over 100. So the opportunities out there. Do your best to attend. And again, for STMH, I speak for STMH, they normally have a session for networking. For young scientists, basically they get senior researchers in every field, and they kind of arrange a meeting with the junior scientists. And it helps you networking. I've benefited from that a lot. So it's one piece of advice I encourage people to do. Go out there, make sure you present, look out for those grants, start early enough.
Go get them. Thank you so much, Martin. That was so insightful. I think the audience also agrees with me. Thank you for all this great advice. You can follow Martin Lukindu on LinkedIn or on ResearchGate. He also has a profile there. And we hope to see you next time for our next session. We'll keep you posted on the team, but see you very soon. Thank you, everybody. Have a nice afternoon.